Hey everybody, welcome back to the channel and welcome back to some more Warforge. I know it's been quiet on the channel. I did want to get a video up for this week and I was hoping it would be about the new orcs that are coming, but we still don't really know what's going on. EG is a little quiet and kind of making me think, is this going to be our first sub-faction of something like the orcs that we've already seen, right? That's the Goth clan. This looks to be snake bites oriented, something quite different. So could it be more than a reinforcement? Less? Who knows? And as of today, when I'm recording on Thursday, we've gotten 2 little previews as graphics, and that's it. So today, to focus on this video, I figured we would talk about some sort of ranked update. Usually I like to do some sort of like a tier list, but today I'm just going to take you through what exactly I'm playing and also some of the decks that I'm considering on the side that maybe I'll pivot to, as this is about midway through this season. And right now we're sitting at 33rd on the ladder, which is totally solid. Got to do a lot of grinding as I was able to work from home a little bit more this last week, and that was really nice. I don't know how much I'm going to be able to keep up with the top 50, but I figured I'd at least share my insights for where things are at. And I will say, to have a little bit of a side discussion here, I think this season and seasons recently have been very polarizing. Generally, the faction that has received the newest content in the form of a reinforcement has really done wonders for that faction becoming tier 1. We had it with Sisters of Battle. We have it now with Astra Militarum. With Dark Angels on release, I think I climbed to like 3,400 when I was just learning them because of how strong they were. So we've got a bit of a trend that the newest thing has been the most powerful thing. That has not been historically true for every single new release. But it is something that I have seen people, and I will speak for myself here, lose a little bit of interest in for grinding it out. Now, we do have wonderful things like the Warpforge open, hoping to do maybe some commentating for that at some point. Shout out to all the folks who have been organizing that. That's a tremendous effort. Tournament organizing is no small feat. I've done it before for other games. So I do love that even when interest at times wanes in the game, there are still plenty of people behind the scenes doing many things, and I figured I would just really to sum up this video, go over my top 4 factions that I'm playing. Obviously you see them here, but also talk about 2 other decks that I've really liked that I think are in a good position, that may be worth entertaining if you haven't gotten your hands on them yet. So as always, thank you so much for sticking with the channel. We are almost at 1K subscribers. We are just getting closer and closer day by day. So thank you so much for showing your support. And other than that, let's dive into what are the 6 recommended decks that I want to share with you today. All right, folks. I am not going to spend too much time on this. I know everyone's pretty sick of seeing Imperial Guard, though I think the games are much more fun and competitive when neither of us see Vitus Griff, or when we're playing with or against Imperial Guard not seeing Vitus Griff, as it's one of the most impactful cards to be played currently. This deck has been fun to try and iterate and reiterate on, because I've always preferred Ursula with her ability to grab the stratagems, and obviously 2 really powerful stratagems, but really the most powerful one being Armored Lightning, which has really just completely transformed the power level of this faction, because generally what you had to do with Ursula was curve out troops and all in, and that's a really fragile strategy when you think about how this game operates highly on tempo, flanking, as well as factions having tremendous access to AoE damage. But this deck has just become so resilient and flexible. I do think that she is the best warlord for Astra Militarum. I know some people prefer Dankler, or even Hector, who has come out recently. I went on a nasty losing streak with Hector. I'm still kind of learning the differences between the warlords, but I just think that Ursula is flexible and has an incredible amount of options. So you can really craft your game plan around every single matchup that you're playing, and that's kind of why I feel she gets the nod as the tier 1 Ursula build here. I don't think there's going to be a ton of changes. I have actually just been running the Tempestus Scion straight up as my 2-drop instead of Rattling, and generally liked it. I mean, it's nice when I can give it flank from the stratagem I can pull from my ability. Generally, the troop wants to be cleared. It does have the upside that it can get that free 2 damage and potentially a stun on a troop. So that's an adjustment I've made. I'm also running double Scout Sentinel, fully leaning into curving out and into an Armored Lightning. Camouflage actually, I feel like over time has become more relevant as a keyword in the game because there is a lot more targeted damage abilities or AoE where you need to target one thing or target the other. Just thinking of the 4E flame, cleansing flames out of the Sisters of Battle, but also just like some decent card advantage too. But I've just liked curving ideally, Tempestus Scion into Khazarkin, or the Tempester Sergeant, which definitely is just as good as I thought it would be, which is just that it has like every keyword and stat line you could ask for out of a 3-drop. And I actually chose to cut things like Cadia Stands because I generally just want to be curving out. This is my play style, though. I really like to be the aggressor in most matchups. So although Cadia Stands would be great in some matchups, I kind of just want to consistently be doing what I'm doing. Though I think the combination of High Command as a stratagem and the 1 Vox Operator is still a really nice little combo. And that's why we even split up between 1 Chimera and 1 Taurox Prime, because Taurox Prime really can be quite powerful in the right spot, and then ending the curve with Leman Russ. So this is definitely more of an aggro-y version of Ursula. You can build her more mid-range, even, I guess, more towards the control side. You can build her burn. That's why I think she is the meta queen at the moment, because she's not only just running some of the best cards in the game as the Astra Militarum, but her flexibility is absolutely crazy. I've also really liked this little discount package with 2 Vanquisher and 1 Full Throttle. That's something that Tarquil, who was the War Master from last season, had liked running, and I love that flexibility. I think this can make it really hard for your opponent to break up a really powerful sequence, going 3, 4, 5, 6 into the game, and building board states that just your opponents can't really deal with. So that's all I need to say about this deck. It's just probably the best thing to be doing in the format, and I am sure many people are kind of tired of seeing it or having to play with it to get to the top ranks. That is just where the meta is, and there's not too much we can do about it. So at least if you're going to play Ursula, try and have some fun with it, and maybe experiment with your build as well. And here we arrive at my second most winning faction and deck, and probably my favorite deck of the format. Now, I know people, as soon as I put a deck guide out on this, and then BJ also covered this, and some other folks had already been working on these decks last season, or when GSC got their reinforcements. Forgot that also made them tier 1, right, when we were talking about it earlier. But they really, really just basically cut Sabotage off at the knees this last patch, and I really think that this is the best deck for the Gene Stealers in general, and Saffa just has always been a powerhouse warlord in terms of deck building, and I've come to really love this deck and honestly get better and better over time. It's the same thing, right? 2 Roaming Outriders, 1 Perfect Ambush. You're just yoinking these stratagems out of your deck. I don't think there are a ton of other changes from most of the meta builds. I like the 1 Biophagus. BJ had sold me on this. I actually have come to like it quite a bit. And I've still continued to love Leman Russ as the sort of late game win con. It's really not hard to get to 8 energy and get a couple procs out of this, especially, and I've done this much more with my sequencing, when you are able to stick a Goliath truck with Perfect Ambush. And as long as you're not playing against a warlord that has a lot of access to stun, this also sets up your 8-cost Cult Leman Russ, if this was sitting in your hand from the opening, to be able to go off. And when I'm saying this stuff, and initially when I was playing the deck, it sounds like kind of Fairy Tale Wonderland. It's really not. The deck is very consistent. You're gonna Roman Outriders twice before 8 energy most games. Sometimes you have the flexibility not to, and then you're kind of running away with the game. But I will tell you, staring down the barrel of a Cult Leman Russ is really, really difficult to deal with for most decks. And I do think that you want to hedge your bets towards really heavy vehicles in your hands, because also your Roaming Outriders do a lot of damage, especially if your opponents don't want to play a board into it, which happens in some matchups. And then you're Roaming Outriders your opponent for like 5 to 6 damage every go, right? So that's, 10 to 12 points of burn and CC alongside, other incidental damage that you can get. The deck is just also, for those who like combo, for those who liked Uprising before, for ex Magic players, continued Magic players who like to play Storm. This also has that between the Jackal Specialist and the Atlan Jackal as well. But there's also a bunch of other Uprising combos in the deck too. This is my current build. I really don't think I'm going to change anything else. I generally think that the deck needs to be consistent and have a wealth of vehicles. And I've just come to really like how this all plays. So Vehicle Uprising, I'm sure you guys have seen it. But if you're looking to pick it up, this is really what I would recommend. And I wouldn't really tweak too much out of it. You could maybe change a Biophagus into like a Trooper if you wanted to. Honestly, I feel like that's the only slot that's open for the most part. So maybe another Gene Stealer Familiar. But I actually cut the 6-drop leader that discounts things because I just found that it wasn't really doing enough. And I didn't really want to play it on 6 or 7 energy. I usually wanted to play out other vehicles and then curve into my Lehman Russ. So that's where everything stands with Vehicle Uprising. Okay, returning to, a favorite build since Dark Angels were released, which is the Azriel teleport build. And I think most people's lists probably look like this. I think there's some variation. As much as I love Ravenwing Asmodai, I do just find that he has a lot weaker matchups into the field generally, although I still lose to him, especially when I'm playing Azriel into Asmodai. It's definitely, I think, favored for Asmodai. But I think Azriel just tends to be more consistent. Still, there are some streaks I'll go on where like I hit teleporters at the wrong time. I don't see the right legendaries at the right time. But generally, this deck still gets me to 3k pretty easily, and I'm sure I can keep going with it. It's not the most fun, stimulating deck to play. It's fairly simple. You're just mulliganing very conservatively. You're trying to make sure that your teleporters are coming off the top of your deck. In aggressive matchups, you're hoping to stick Deathwing Knights as well as your Inner Circle Companion to guard yourself. I'm thinking, of Gaskull and things of that nature. And I also still really like the One of Company Veteran. I actually think the weak point of this deck, to me, has always been it's great. You can play really strong things like Deathwing Nightmaster later. Still feel like this guy is a little bit overtuned. But the early to mid game got worse, especially because the Strike Master got nerfed. So if you come out swinging against Azriel and you understand how they can sequence their flankers into you, and sometimes you really can't do too much. If they happen to not have the flanker at the right time, maybe they only can play out their, librarians on 3 instead of a Black Knight. Really, the key to beating this deck is just knowing how it wants to curve out and then working from there. And I've liked the one of Reliquary, one of Inner Circle. It's possible I should have a second Reliquary. But I really like coming out the gate trying to curve out into my opponent, because if I can shore up my weakness early with Tamins, with Black Knight, Librarian, obviously Deathwing Terminator, and Inner Circle Companion, then once I get into that mid game, maybe set up a Deathwing Knight or Strike Master Ezekiel, and then from there, I should be winning the game most of the time. Azriel's probably going to need some change, whether it's tweaking cards or tweaking his ability. Maybe the agenda. I'm not sure. I'm not really sure what's going to tamp down the power level of this faction other than hitting the stats of certain cards. But I know that that's kind of like a feels bad moment, I think, for a lot of people who do enjoy playing them. But either way, the Dark Angels, the Death Angels is what I was going to say. The Dark Angels are bringing a lot of death. I think Asmodai is totally viable too. I would put him in the tier 2 category. I think Azriel is just slightly better, slightly more consistent. Way less high roll, I will say. Asmodai has some insane high rolling potential. So if you like that kind of slot machine aspect to him, go ahead. But I think if you're really trying to grind on the ladder, not that everyone who watches my videos does, but I think most people are looking for pretty competitive lists. I have loved this list, and I think Bumping up the Unwavering Zeals was a right call. I think having one Landspeeder Vengeance has felt great. Double Companion. I played a lot with the numbers in this deck, and I really do like where this list has ended up. So, been looking for an excuse to play Azriel Teleport. I think Azriel Teleport does pretty well. I think it can fend off Astra Militarum. I think it struggles a bit with GSE combo. And then I think generally into the field it does pretty well. So that is the teleportation station. Well, as we close out the 4 factions that I've grinded the most with this season, we've got the good old Hulk Smash with a little bit of adjustment. Being that I am now running 2 Grot tanks, as Unstable was strictly just buffed. Right now this can hit your enemy's units. And what does Gordrang love more than random damage? Not much else, because really all you need to get is have your opponent get in the 10 to 14 life range to set up proper killie or warbikers. And so having like random damage flying around, like even just like plopping this bomb squig out, is really, really obnoxious for your opponent. Now, there's been a lot of discussion about Zagstruck. I do have a Zag build. I've also been talking with Slither, who's been working on a Zag build himself. Excellent player, excellent deck builder. And I think he's been doing fairly well with it. I think there's a valid argument that maybe Zag is a little bit better. I still feel like Gordrang feels more consistent to me. I still go on bad streaks. I matched into like double Erica, double Jane Czar the other day. Lost every single one, right? Because I'm getting stunned, chain stunned for the most part. Those are my worst matchups. It's going to be hard for me to win those games. It's certainly not 0%, but it's not a ton higher, I guess. I still think Hulk Smash is really, really powerful. I think it's good into Dark Angels. I think you can beat up on GSC combo, though the stunning from Rubbing Outriders is pretty rough. What else? Can it beat Astra Militarum? I think it probably has a better matchup into Astra Militarum over GSC, because those are really kind of the top 2 decks in my mind, is Ursula and Saffa, like I showed at the beginning, earlier in the video. So this has been kind of my my 4th deck that I've been playing, but it's still really fun, really powerful. Trying out one Def Copta that I can play out on 2 energy. Still not sure that like really matters. But I still love just having the Will of Gorks for the late game. Double No Mucking About, double Scorcher Assault. Snazwagon I'm playing 2 of now because it's got the unstable upside as well. Still have like the Boss Knob and Grizzle Scarboy as the 5 slot. Prophet of Wa I feel like does really well in this deck when you just need to be able to pick the right stratagems for the right board state. And then the Veteran Store Boys, of course, Squig Buggy being even scarier now. So I think this deck, it has a fragility to it to some degree, but also I've won games I really feel like I shouldn't, because they just like couldn't close out against me, and then I reset the board with Will of Gork after healing myself enough, and then just comboed with my ability plus Makari plus Warbiker, right? And that's how a lot of games can end. So the deck still has quite a lot of juice to it. We'll see what the new Orc package brings. I'm a little scared of like how good some of the other Orc cards could be. I mean, like, I assume if it's a sub-faction, this is where we're going into a little conspiracy mode here. If it's a sub-faction, I guess we would have new warlords, or maybe we'd have one warlord. Would they share a card pool? I have zero idea, but I think that Hulk Smash is still a very viable archetype, and if it gets any sort of upgrades like that you can use out of this new card pool reinforcement, whatever it's going to be, this new content update, I feel like this deck just becomes even scarier. So I would still say Jimbosh Gordrang is kind of where it's at for Orcs, but I do think Zagstruck probably has an edge in some matchups and some board states. And it's just about like finding the right deck construction. So I would still definitely recommend smashing as much as you can with good old Gordy. All right, folks, as we wrap up the video today, we're going to go over 2 decks that I've played a little bit here and there. I will say I played more with Neuro than the final deck that we'll go over. But I still think that these are definitely somewhere in the tier 2 bracket. I do think that Neuro is more on the map now. Obviously, more people are playing him over Swarmlord because Swarmlord got the 5 health nerf, and I think people are just kind of tired. Also, Neuro got the Synapse buff, so you don't have to run all of these kind of like, cheap, sort of fragile Synapse cards, and instead you kind of get to play sort of the classic like big unit Synapse sort of style, and you get to play Norn Emissary. I will say today when I got to play 2 of these things, it's pretty nasty. Now you've got this high roll that you can get, but I also just love that you can buff your health early, and I really like this kind of like tight knit package of 2 Encircle the Prey, 2 Predator Instincts, 2 Enhanced Organisms. I'm still playing with should I have another one, but I think Apex Predator has definitely performed very well for me. The +3 on this, it is just like much more potent, and being at 4 energy, it's a lot more easy to enable, especially if you're going second, right? You can potentially curve out, your good 5-drop on 3 and then Apex Predator and like completely, wipe out their board or something like that. But also for the late game, it's really, really scary, especially when paired with something like Ravenous Hunter too. And the fact that you can put these on your Warlord, right? I don't need another unit to do it. I can just buff my Warlord is such a boon, I think, to this strategy. Obviously, I am no Shimatsu. He is the Hive Lord. But I played a bit of games on this. Probably going to stream some games of this because I actually just love playing this deck. Now, I built this a little bit off of Shimatsu. I built this off of playing against other people. I'm still not sure, like, is Lictor the 4-drop I want to be playing? It's got more health, so then I can rebuff its health if I want to. Maybe having a stealth unit would still be useful. I'm trying Double Psychophage because also Shimatsu's been playing this card, and in some cases it's worse than the 5-drop that we all love, and I'm blanking on the name right now. That's armor, ranged, or melee, but you always choose armor. But it does have a cool angle to it, and sometimes this card's really, really scary and really annoying. Still figuring out, maybe I should have 2 Tyrant Guards, but I think 2 Zoanthrope is really, really important to catch back up on the board. And then I generally like this 6-drop package. I like the Gargoyle. I think the Gene Stealers do some work. And I've liked one of Leviathan Tendrils. I do think you kind of need it as you scale into the late game. So I've just been having a ton of fun with this deck, and it feels relatively competitive. It's not tier 1 certainly, but I think it is in tier 2. I think it's kind of earned its keep now. You get to play Rapacious Hunger, which is one of the better cards into Astra Militarum. It is tough if they get armor on their units, but if they don't, and they're not always going to have it, they're not always going to sequence that. Rapacious Hunger is just one of the better board clears in the format currently. And then sometimes you high roll with biomorphologies, you high roll with Norn, you high roll with getting your Rav Hunter at the right time. This faction has always had a lot of really scary angles to just run away with the game. And now I think with the Neuro buff, there's actually even more potential to get there. So, but don't make the mistake of trying to Encircle Prey your Neurothrope. It won't let you, because that's not allowed in this game. I think in HHL you can stealth your Warlord, or like some of them have special abilities, but not in Warpforge, and I think that's probably a good thing. So that is new Neuro. Definitely let me know, especially for these last 2 decks, of other recommendations, as I've played these decks a lot less. But I've been having a blast just going off and synapsing left and right. All right, closing us out, big shout out to Algorithm for this deck list. Repent, it did have a funnier name, but I try to keep the content here more family friendly, as you might have noticed. But it was definitely around the Repent Penitence feel, let's say. So why Morvenn? I've played against Erica quite a bit recently. I think people have been picking them back up again into Astra Militarum. I do think Erica might just be a little bit more consistent into the broader field, but I think Repent and this kind of all-in style, right? We're going to be playing Death Cults, obviously the Arc of Flagellants. We're playing Double Cleansing Flames, Hollow Martyrs, less concerned with kind of the Faith package. We're playing Dominion Superior, right, for the pings. Spirit of the Martyr, which can be really, really nasty. We're also playing Penitent Engine and Mortifier at the top of our curve, which sometimes Mortifier just hard locks you, and there's basically not a way for you to not get killed. Morvenn has always functioned fairly well on low faith requirement. Erica was kind of the same, though I think Erica has a little bit easier ability to gain faith. Obviously, starting with prayer is the best start for something like Erica, but you don't really need to start that way with Morvenn. I think Morvenn has a little bit more of a clear game plan of like, I'm going to control the board the whole matchups and maybe accrue a life advantage. And then, yeah, I'll play out some haymakers. I'll set up maybe a mortifier. Maybe I'll bring it back with my Rite of Restoration. I do like the one miraculous feat. It's possible you might want to run two, but then you kind of get into the issue of having to run more Relics of St. Catherine, which definitely has been markedly worse at 4 energy for 3 faith. Anyway, Algorithm really talked me up on this deck. I have not played it a ton. I'm actually probably going to stream a bit of it as well, just to have fun and try it out. It does seem on paper like a good way of potentially beating down your opponent almost Gordrang style into something like GSC, but then very much having a full anti go wide package into Astra Militarum. I think those are the two big decks that everyone has to be considering in their deck building to some degree. But yeah, it's a different way to play Sisters. It's obviously much more lower faith requirement because faith has just gotten nerfed after it was really, really strong and it was too easy to accumulate. So this is just kind of, I think you could play Erica, you could play Morvenn, but I do think they both have a pretty decent spot into the current meta. So I think those are worth considering. And I hope it was fun in this video just to see, I guess what are like the top tier decks, right? But also look at some decks that are maybe not so top tier, but are competitive and have some fun and interesting play involved. So that is Repent by Algorithm. Great player, great deck builder. And I thought that this was a really cool and interesting build to shout out that I haven't seen a ton on ladder, but once or twice I've run into it, it always surprises me how much damage this deck can deal and really pressure your life total with. So that is Repent by Algorithm. All right, folks, thanks so much if you made it through the whole video. As always, I really appreciate it. I'm happy to be here. I know the content has been slower here and there. I'm hoping to pick it up. Definitely over the summer. I should have a bit more time, which I'm excited for. But as we are marching towards April, we're just waiting for the new Orks. We're waiting for some exciting new content. And I've just been getting to play ladder a bit more and wanted to offer my thoughts. Honestly, might get my Tyranid score up there. We'll see how good the new Orc stuff is. Maybe I'll switch into that. But it's just no secret. I think that Astra Militarum, GSC, and DA are just top of the ladder by far. I think they all probably need some addressing. I would say Astra Militarum, even if it's just like really Vitus getting pretty hard nerfed. But also could see some buffs for other factions too. I'd almost always rather see buffs. I think Ultramarines have competitive builds. I think Eldar still do. Necrons, I think it's a little tougher. Tau, I think people have done well with. Chaos, I think people still do somewhat well with. Sisters actually have been doing pretty well. I have barely played, and then I lost this morning playing a bit of Morvenn. So, yeah, I think there are a lot of viable builds. It's just tough when the kind of gap between the top tier and the mid tier is pretty noticeable. So we'll see what balance brings in a couple of weeks, but also just excited to check in with you all here on the channel. And so, as always, thank you so much for your support. Feel free to subscribe, like, all that good stuff, and I'll catch you guys next time.